All right, welcome back, roommate. Back to gasoline and taking a look, and this time we're going to look at some line charts for gasoline prices over the past couple of years. During the time period of September through 2014 to 2015, 2015-16, 2016-17 are our current year here. And so we're going to take a look at the monthly prices for Medford, Oregon, and we picked Medford because that was the closest large city that I could find that had those prices recorded for us, so they didn't have Klamath Falls there at the GasBuddy.com site. At least I couldn't find anything for Klamath Falls. So Medford, that's what we're going to look at. Pretty close. It'll be fairly similar to what we experience in the Klamath area. And so we'll just do some line charts and take a look at how prices have changed over time, and also get experience by using multiple line charts on the same graph. So step number one for you is to create that which we are looking at here. Yes, you must key all of that in there just like it is, and that's why you want to take the opportunity to learn those 10 key skills, and then keying in this information will go pretty quickly. So you can go ahead and pause and get this typed in. And what I want to show you here before you start doing the dates here is that we're actually going to format these as labels rather than as numbers. And so I need to show you the special character that we use to do that, to indicate that we want it to be a label. Because normally if we go in there and we put in just 9 somewhere, let me see, let me come over to a space. Well, just right up above it here. If I just come in here and type 9-1, all right, it believes that I want that to be a date. And a date, as you will recall, is actually a value. We can add, subtract dates, and we can do date arithmetic. And I think we did that early on back in August here, where you could figure out exactly how many days old you are. But for this particular graph, we want our date to actually be a label. And so when you're putting these in order to avoid this happening, what we are going to do is to first key in the apostrophe. And that is located next to the enter key, just to the left of the enter key or to the right of your semicolon. If you're using the proper keyboarding technique, you would reach over with your 4th finger. And of course, you can always look at our keyboarding chart up there on the board, and you can see it's in the light blue up there next to the enter key with the right hand. So you start with that, and that is an indication to Excel that we want the information that we put in there to be treated as a label. And so you're going to see that we'll align it to the left side of the cell rather than the right side like the values do. So we want this to look like September 1st. So I'll go ahead and do some of these with you here. So 9-1. And then next, so apostrophe, and then we want this to be 10-1. So it's a label alignment character. Apostrophe 12-1. Apostrophe. And then we've got, that's December, so next it's going to be, yeah, don't put 13. It's going to be 1. 2-1. So go ahead and finish those all the way down to where you get to this last one, then will be a year later, which will be 9-1. So go ahead and finish those, and then key in all of these values, and then we will continue from that point. Next up, let's do some formatting here. You've probably noticed that your columns are not as wide as mine, so what I did is I highlighted these, or made these columns active, and then come on over here to Format, Column Width, and I set mine to 20. Yours is probably somewhere around 8 to 9. So go ahead and change those and make that 20. Give us a lot of space to work with here. And next up, you notice some of our values here, even though we keyed in some of these values with 3 decimal places. Here's 1 decimal place. They had zeros after it, so they don't show up here. And so what we can do is go ahead and increase that to show all the decimal places. So we have some uniformity across these 3 years here of data. And so what you can do is select all those values. And then let's change our number value from general up here in the number section. Let's drop that down and choose number. And then increase by 1 decimal place. So now we have uniform looking values here, everything with 3 decimal places. Now if you haven't done so already, we'll go ahead and put everything in the center. These here I've already put in the center. Yours might look like this. If that's the case, then you can go ahead and either you could do the whole thing at one time, or if you want to start here with this row 5, make that range of cells active, label alignment for center. Or you can just select everything and put it all right in the center. And I also have a border underneath these headings. So once again, there's no border, and select and make that active. Come up here to this font area and choose a bottom border. Now the next step, just to make sure that you have the same numbers as me, is that we could go ahead and quickly just do a quick check here by adding all these values up, and that would show whether or not you keyed in the same numbers as me. So the shortcut, again, in fact, if you want, we could just go ahead and put a border underneath this just to make it easy to read. And then we'll go ahead and just add these up. So I'm clicked here in B19, and you could just come right up here to the auto sum. And it automatically selects those values. Sum will give us the total of all of these added up. Press enter. And so hopefully you have 38.16. Now remember, we're doing this just to check that you have entered these values the same as those that I have here on the screen. This number, we're not going to use this for anything. This would not be a useful value for us. We're just using it as a check. And so you could do that again, auto sum, and enter that. The other thing you could do is, once you've got the first formula created, you could just use your little fill handle, which would copy that same formula all the way across. And so then you could use that as a guide to check and see if you have the same numbers. If you don't have the same total, then go through each one of these dates and find out where you're off. Be good proofreading practice for you. And once again, I cannot emphasize enough that if you will learn 10-key method, touch key method of 10-key, you'll make less errors, and it'll go a lot faster, and you'll have a lot more fun doing this work. So check those numbers. I'll take a pause here, and then in the next section, we'll go ahead and start creating some line graphs of these gasoline prices from Medford, Oregon. Well, next up, let's create 3 different line charts and put them all on the same graph. And then we'll do some basic formatting and take a look at how things have changed over the last 3-year time periods as far as gasoline prices here in our local area. So I'm back on that chart that we finished just a few minutes ago, and we added up our columns to make sure that we had our numbers correct. And so now we can go ahead and start creating some line charts. So we'll go ahead and select these values here for 2 years ago. Insert, line chart. Very similar to what we did last week. And so now we have a blue line that indicates the price of gasoline during a time period 2 years ago. We'll right click, select data, and we need to give some dates to this X axis. So we'll click edit, label range, and there's our dates that'll be used for each line chart. Click OK. We'll arrange this so we can see both. There we go. So we have one series of data here. And what we could do is go ahead and give that series a name. Edit. And we'll call that 2 years ago. Don't worry about this right now. Now we need to add 2 more line charts here. So we'll click Add. And this is going to be 1 year ago. And then for the series values, you want to come over here and click what we call a collapse button. That'll give us access to the worksheet, and we can select the data. So there's our next series of prices for gasoline. And then come back and click that collapse button again. Get back into our series edit. So there is our next line that we just named 1 year ago. And we'll click OK, and we're back to our Select Data Source window. And now we're going to do it again for the current year. So click Add. We'll name this Current Year. Series values, collapse, access to the worksheet. Select the current year values. Collapse button, and there's our gray line. And we can go ahead and click OK. So we have the same x-axis scale for all 3 of these values for prices of gasoline. Next up, we can take a look at formatting these. And one of the things you can do that's pretty easy to do is here in the Chart Tools, in the Design window, and come on over to the Quick Layout and see if we can find one that we like here. Because we need to give some meaning. We need a legend so we can give some meaning to these colored lines so we know what we're looking at here. And you'll notice you have some presets here of different choices. Some of them are not helpful. That is just too busy. That's really a mess. And so you're probably going to look for something like this one or this one. That's a little busy. It's not enough. Too many data points. This one here includes our data table. It's just too busy. We just want a nice clean picture. And maybe a label on the X or on the Y axis. So maybe something like this one could be okay. Layout number 1. And then we could come in here and that would be price per gallon. The blue is 2 years, the orange is a year ago, and the current year is gray. Here's our dates down here. That looks reasonable. And if you want, you can make that a little larger, stretch it out. Chart title. Medford, Oregon. Pause that video and get that completed, and then we'll take a look at formatting elements within the chart. Let's go in and first format the plot area and change the color of our lines. Now, if you don't have this up already, what you can do is come into the plot area, right-click, Format Plot Area. And that brings up this nice menu. And then I could come into the plot area and say the blue line here, maybe I want to change the color of that. So I select it and make it active, and you'll see all the plot points are indicated here. And so the first thing I can do is I can affect the line. So right now it's set at an automatic. If you want to leave it like that, that's fine, or you can come up and try some different styles. But you can come in here right here and just change the color. And we did some of this previous lesson, I think it was last week. And so if you want to change the color of that, you can certainly go through lots of different colors. And you can also even just put in the numbers if you really want to customize those. So once again, click on the line, automatic, color. I'll just make that one real black, and then the 1 year ago line, we could change that to get a nice red there. So come up with some type of a color scheme that you find to be attractive. So the black is the current, 2 years ago blue, and then the red's 1 year ago. And then the other thing you can do that's new here is that we could go ahead and put some indicators on these markers. Because right now, if we select out of there, just nice smooth lines. If we point to them, it'll tell us what that value is and the date and so forth. But we can also put some markers on there. So I'll click on that 2 year ago line, and this time instead of line, I'll come over here to marker. And then you see we have marker options. And right now there's none. So what you could do is click built in, and then you can change the type. So we've got a nice little square there. So I can put a square on that one. You can change the size of it if you want. And so that way it's easier to point to it if you're trying to get information about that particular data point. And then maybe on this black one, I'll come in and I'll make it a diamond. And then the last ones go in, I'll put that as a triangle. Oops, not that one. I want that right there. So then we got some markers on those data points. Then our last step is to go ahead and let's make that a separate sheet. And we'll give that a name, and we'll call it Price Trends. And there we go. Nice big chart. And then we can sit back and look at that and go, well, what has happened over these last 3-year time periods here? And it looks like gasoline was at its highest point 2 years ago, and then its lowest point a year ago. And so there we are right now, somewhere in the middle. And I'll also notice here that we're on an upward swing. And you have to ask yourself, what would cause that to happen? And you may recall, right around in here, we had those hurricanes. And it's believed that that is adding to the cost of fuel throughout the country. Maybe not affecting us as much as some other areas. But what we're going to do in the next lesson is take a look at the difference between prices over the last month in Medford and then prices in Houston and compare how those two have changed. And so what we'll do is a line chart for a 1-month time period, comparing Medford gasoline prices with Houston gasoline prices. So go ahead and finish that up. Change the colors if you want. Feel free to create another set of line charts and just format it differently. It's good to get some practice. The more practice, the more likely it is that you will remember this. So when the time comes for you to use this in either your other classes or those of you that will be going on to work or to college, you are going to have a use for the program known as Microsoft Excel.